Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Please like and subscribe. Fucking with this hat. Consider becoming a member to the channel. I'm going to get ready to go run. But I want to give you all a video. But consider becoming a member to the channel. If you enjoy the content, $2.99 a month. That's it, man. If I can get 3,000 of y'all, shit, preferably everyone, to become a member to the channel, things can really take off for us. But it's up to you. But I'd appreciate it. Anyway, you know what? For this video, let me see something. Because I keep hearing people say, man, we like the thumbnails. So how about this? Not everybody wants to see my big head. How about that? This is where we at with Canelo and Terrence Crawford. Look, man, Canelo may be burned out. And then Crawford with his inactivity, that's not going to help him. I understand Crawford last 4 or 5 fights. There's been a year in between fights. And he's somehow been able to get in the ring and still perform better than a fighter who's been active. So I get it. But you see in boxing, right? The danger isn't just about what people are suggesting when it comes to Canelo and Crawford, that the fight's really going to be about who's stronger and who hits harder. When the reality is, it's about timing, it's about conditioning. You know, power matters too. But really, you know, I really think when you talk about a fighter and mental preparedness, mental readiness, psychological readiness, man. Now, with Crawford and Canelo, listen, these two guys are going to come and they're going to collide. Will we get a mashup, crash up? I hope so. We know Canelo's going to bring it. And one thing about Crawford's not necessarily a guy who's going to put on his track shoes and start to run laps in the ring. Like, Crawford will utilize all the real estate inside that ring, but it doesn't mean he's looking to do that every round. No, he'll move, set his feet, let his hands go, but he's aware that he has the whole ring and he has 3 minutes to utilize the ring and the time to make sure that he wins each round. Now, Crawford starts to get the upper hand, realizing that he's got you figured out. Then Crawford will hold his ground, walk you down, and get you up out of there. But with the two of these guys getting ready to collide, look, man, both of these men carry vulnerabilities rooted in their recent activity levels. I've been talking about this, and I'm going to keep talking about it. When you look at Guadalajara, Jalisco's finest, Canelo, the redhead brother fought 5 times in the last 31 months, including three bouts in the past 18. You throw Crawford's in there, he would have fought 4 times. That is absurd. That shows you a man on a mission, a man who's in shape, a man who has great muscle memory, a man who should be firing on all cylinders. But it could also mean that you could get a man who's burnt out. Now, conversely, when you're talking about a guy like Crawford, he's going to enter the ring after a 400-plus day layoff, right? That's crazy. That shit to me is just a suicide mission. But when you look at Crawford, previous fights, a year layoff, then fighting again, didn't really seem to affect him that much. The Madrimah fight was a little different. Maybe it was the weight, maybe it was the inactivity, maybe it was the 10-ounce gloves. But for this fight with him, with Canelo, it's going to be his longest stretch of inactivity since turning pro, and it's just not good. I can't help but, when I think about 400-plus day layoff, I can't help but think about like Jamal Charlo, Keith Thurman. and guys coming back to the ring, and you can still see that they got the skills. They're still great, but you can see some slippage. So with Crawford, I wonder if there's going to be some slippage because he hasn't been that active. With Canelo, I wonder if there's going to be some slippage because maybe he's been too active. So the real question is, who is more at risk? Crawford fans are going to say Canelo. Canelo fans are going to say Crawford. Hood Champion's going to say the answer isn't simple. But I think when we try to break this down, I think we can unearth a fascinating contrast between the two. Now you start with Canelo. When you look at Canelo on paper, yeah, he does everything great, but his activity is definitely a strength. He fought Edgar Berlanga, which was a tough fight. Jaime Munguia, which was a tough fight. William School, they need to take his ass back over to Cuba and leave him there. You know what I'm saying? Because that shit he did was just horrible. But the bottom line is Canelo fought Berlanga, Munguia, School in the last year and a half, going 36 rounds without a loss. So Canelo, he still looked sharp, still looked conditioned, and he's battle tested. So he's bringing that into the ring with Terence Crawford. I just think there's a hidden cost to constant warfare, to always breaking your body down. Burnout in boxing is real. Between fights, the body may recover. But the nervous system, the joints, and mental focus can subtly degrade. Is that going to show up and happen for a guy like Canelo? The reality is this. Fighters who stay too active, especially in high-stake bouts, and everything Canelo gets into is a high-stake fight. And that's just, I guess it's one of the downsides of being at his level, but it's one of the consequences that come with being the face of boxing. He's always in high-stake bouts. But when you're in high-stake bouts, you risk entering the ring physically present, but mentally dulled. And I talked about this last night in a video about Crawford. Canelo cannot afford to come in the ring and not be able to piece together what Terence Crawford is doing, or Terence Crawford trying to set him up, Crawford trying to establish traps. Canelo has to be able to immediately recognize that and react. Like Crawford, he and Canelo and Crawford kind of have some similarities as far as their styles. Canelo relies on timing. He relies on rhythm like Crawford, but Crawford's a rhythm disruptor. And Canelo's a big-time counterpuncher. When you talk about the reflexes, I mean, if Canelo, who has good reflexes, very good reflexes, but if his reflexes are slightly off and Crawford is turned on, I'm telling you, whether you want to hear this or not, Terence Crawford will exploit it. You got to understand, man, Canelo, he's not just staying in Guadalajara, Jalisco, man. He's training in different places, and he got the right training partners, man. Canelo is looking to get in that ring and put the bing-bings on Terence Crawford. But what I'll tell you this, although Canelo's doing the right things in training camps, his training camps, right? This is no bullshit. They're known for being notoriously intense. He's known for sparring extremely hard, lifting heavy. And no matter how much discomfort he experiences in the ring, outside the ring, through the training and everything he puts his body through, Canelo pushes through the pain. But that grind, right? Because that's what that shit is. You can't help but accept that the grind Canelo puts himself through is probably accumulating a whole lot of wear. When you think about 3 hard training camps, 3 3 fights that went the distance over the last 18 months, and him getting in the ring with Terrence Crawford, you can't help but wonder if he's going to have just a little bit of slippage, which will be more than enough for Crawford to do the business. You take a look at guys like Oscar De La Hoya, one of my favorite fighters. That's why I'm always bringing him up. Miguel Cotto, man. They just experienced late career burnout after years of constant activity. You know what I mean? Even Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, he just fought frequently, but he showed signs of decline when his schedule became relentless. Canelo's what, 35, 36? His body has absorbed hundreds of rounds, man. Hundreds of rounds since he's been 15. And you just look at the last 18 months. Well, thousands of rounds, really, but your last couple of months, a few fights, it's hundreds and hundreds of rounds, man. So if he's overtrained or he's mentally fatigued, I'll say this: lethally precise, lethal precision, and that's Terrence Crawford, and that could be ultimately what brings Canelo down. Now, if we want to flip the coin, look, I did a video on Terrence Crawford and inactivity, and I'm just telling you, I think it's crazy, man. It should be a glaring concern for every one of the Crawford fans out there. Look, like I said in the video last night, last fought over a year ago against Majimov, man. 13 months out the ring. Yeah, he stays in shape between fights. I did find that Crawford looked a little bit soft, his butt, his legs looked like he put some weight on, like the weight was settling in his lower extremities. His upper body looked a little soft, his face looked a little soft, but they're in between fights, so that's no surprise. But for me, man, I just thought that was a little bit odd. And I will say this. We know that Crawford stays in shape, but I'll say this, that I've never seen him look that way. I'm not saying he was out of shape, because my definition of out of shape and someone else's may be different, but I wasn't used to seeing him that way. But one thing I'll say, there is no substitute for live combat. When we talk about ring rust, okay, Crawford goes a year without fighting, gets in the ring, does the business. He's on the SNAP program, the snack protocol. There's only a couple different products that he uses, but he knows what he needs. And maybe those products are what helps Crawford bridge the inactivity to activity gap to where he can get in the ring and perform like a guy who's extremely active. That's why you see Crawford, his timing is always on point and his decision-making is on point. But I just think right now his decision-making is under fire because people are saying, you're going into the biggest fight of your career. And why wouldn't you take a tune-up? If you thought a tune-up was extremely necessary for Earl Spence, you probably should take 2 or 3 fights before you get in there with Canelo. The inactivity with Terrence Crawford going into the Canelo fight, to some people, it's stupid. Just like Daniel Dubois' dad throwing him a goddamn party and everybody electric sliding and brucking it down before Dubois had to go in the ring and fight Usyk. Dumbass got to the ring 1 hour before the ring walk time. Just didn't make any sense. So when it comes to these fighters, man, who've been inactive, they often hesitate, misjudge distance. And Crawford could fail to pull the trigger because of that. You in there against someone like Canelo. If you are indecisive, Canelo is going to tranquilize you. He will destabilize you. It is going to be a catastrophe in the ring. I was talking last night about science and shit because I said, you know what? I can sit here and give my opinion. I can do research. I can take a few talking points from different articles that I've, critically read over. But I just think the science, man, forget my opinion, forget the different articles out there. Most of these YouTube channels are full of shit. But there are a couple that's worth watching. Most of them, they're so biased, or they talk with so much racial epithets and so much profanity. And yeah, I'm not against the profanity. I'm a retired military guy from the flight line. We cuss like sailors, but I try to tone it down in my videos. But for the most part, you're not getting too much intelligence from people. They're just everyone parroting what everyone else is saying. And you know what's sad about this is so many people have come to my channel and taken some of my videos and the talking points, because I'm gonna tell you, I don't trip over it because who cares, right? My life is great. If it helps somebody go out there and get a little bit extra money, cool. But what I will say, getting back on track, is when it comes to science, man, I was talking about this a little bit last night. It's gonna show you that after 4 to 6 weeks of inactivity, athletes begin to lose neuromuscular sharpness. Things start to slow down, people. The explosive movement starts to decline. Reaction time starts to, deteriorate. And like I said about that video about Crawford last night, it doesn't matter how great your training camp is, the body just cannot, coming off of inactivity, it cannot fully replicate the stress of a real fight. And when you think about Crawford, his whole stance, everything with Crawford, he needs to be locked in. His body needs to be able to respond. He's a master disruptor of what anyone's doing in the ring. He's always taking a look at a fighter if they're starting to land shots, so he knows when he needs to go from one stance to the next stance. And Crawford is all about making sure when you make a mistake, within a millisecond, he makes you pay. Whether he's on the lead foot coming forward or he's allowing you to get shots off, making and slipping and countering. But I am going to tell you, no matter how great Terrence Crawford has been, if his timing is off by a fraction, which I think it will be because it was off by a fraction from Madrimov, and Madrimov was able to capitalize but not finish Crawford, but he did hit him several times, and Crawford can say he wasn't hurt, that's bullshit. But if his stuff is off for Canelo, which it will be, he's going up in weight, he's facing a monster, coming off of inactivity, I just think Canelo, the hook or the uppercut, is going to find his mark. Now that's if Canelo is firing on all cylinders. So you just have to understand the toll this stuff takes on fighters, especially psychologically, man. Turn from a long layoff. No one talks about this. This is a whole nother video. I think I'm going to do a video on this. Performance anxiety, man. Start to question your instincts. Start to do a Teofimo Lopez. He's a good example of performance anxiety. Remember after he fought, I think the Argentinian, the guy, not Chikadze, I forgot his name. But anyway, at the end of the fight, he said, do I still have it? Do I still have it? That's what you call performance anxiety. Now, I'm not at all saying Crawford and Teo are on the same wavelength mentally. No, I'm not saying that. Crawford's mentally tough, but look, he's human. We know he'll go into the phone booth and come out as Southpaw Man and put that Omaha, Nebraska bing bings on you. I don't care about all that shit. If he starts slow, doubt will creep in. And Canelo, who fought 3 times since Crawford's last bout, you better believe he is going to be dialed in from round 1. Canelo knows what he's up against. You look at that, I think it's a Cuban fighter, like 6 feet tall, long arms. The guy ain't no joke. That's who he spars, one of his sparring partners. Canelo going to be ready for Crawford. And I just think that early pressure, man, if Canelo, if the fatigue and and being so active, if he's not burnt out, I think the early pressure could force Crawford into survival mode before he finds his rhythm. And who knows, maybe Canelo doesn't give him an opportunity to find his rhythm. Canelo just puts the Guadalajara and Bing Bings on him. But you know what? You can disagree with me, you can agree with me. I mean, just look at history, man. Forget my opinion, just look at history. History is going to offer cautionary tales. I talked about this before. The Sugar Ray Leonard's coming from long layoffs. Terry Norris beat the shit out of Sugar Ray Leonard. You know what I mean? We already know. Talked about David Hay Bellew, Andre Ward, talking about the long break and timing was off, and and why he needs to retire. But now he's talking about coming back and trying to fight AJ. We all know what it is. Could it be that Andre Ward, even the idea of fighting AJ, talking about coming back to fight him, is because he's just chasing a payday? Is that what Crawford's doing? Andre Ward and Crawford are boys, and Crawford talked to Andre Ward and said, "Look, man, our legacies are already cemented, but who cares if we take a loss? I'm about to make $100 million. You think I care about that loss on my record? I'm already going down in the Hall of Fame." And Andre Ward, with his little weird eyes, probably said, "Yeah. You know what, Crawford, man? Yeah, I think you're right, man. Yeah, I'm gonna call out AJ. Yeah, I could use that extra 50, 75 million. Let me holler at Turkey. Yeah, you know when Turkey's in the house every day is Thanksgiving." They can say what they want, man. Inactivity is a silent killer in boxing. Shit doesn't show up in training. It shows up when the lights are on and the punches are flying. And inactivity could be what leads to Crawford's downfall. Crawford's out here hop, skipping, and jumping in weight. That adds another layer of risk. I keep talking about it. I've been talking about it. I'm going to keep talking about it. Hop, skipping, jumping from 154 to 168. And that shit's going to affect his speed. It can't help but think it's going to affect your endurance and also punch resistance. Think about Crawford's legs. Yeah, Sean Porter went up there, come out snitching and shit, talking about how strong Crawford's legs look and everything. Look, man, the key to Crawford's defense are his legs. But his legs are going to be carrying more mass. And you don't necessarily want to build up a bunch of muscle in your legs and have real bulky legs, man. You know what I mean? Like, that's the last thing that Crawford needs. Because when those muscles start working and stuff, they get tired. What's it called? Lactic acid, man. It builds up in your muscles and shit. Just not good. Just not good, man. And I hate that Sean Porter came out running his mouth, but it is what it is. And those punches may lose snap. So, again, against a natural super middleweight like Canelo, the physical gap is going to be noticeable, and it could be decisive. If Crawford tires early, Canelo will probably walk him down and break him apart. So I'm not trying to paint Canelo out like Canelo's Superman. You know what I'm saying? I think we all know Canelo's not Superman. He's not invincible. You look at what happened. Bivol got him. He exposed some limitations, It was just the movement volume and the sustained pressure. But can Crawford do that? People are saying they believe he can because he's always been able to do it. And plus, he's working with Victor Conte in the snack program. They have an outstanding program with excellent supplements. And you take that into consideration, and if Crawford's sharp, he can probably... I don't think he can, but you just don't know until the fight happens. Maybe he can replicate the blueprints fighters use to beat Canelo, or to make Canelo frustrated. The Arizona De Laras, the Austin Trouts, but that's a big if, man. Again, we're talking about 400 something days outside the ring. Crawford has to be perfect. He's not perfect. He gets hit. He's an imperfect fighter who finds a way to win. But this shit about putting on sides, Crawford will still be fearless, but I don't know if he'll be fast and fluid. Again, it's a tall order against a fighter who's been sharpening his blade nonstop. That's why Canelo looks the way he looks in almost every fight. So who's more in danger? I think it depends on how you want to try to define all this. You know what I mean? Canelo, he risks burnout. I think he's been too active. That could be his downfall. He's risking being burnt out. His body may betray him after years of war. You just don't know when that shit shows up. Crawford, he risked rust. His mind and reflexes may not be ready for the storm that Canelo's bringing. And when Canelo starts hitting him with them lightning bolt or left and right hands and combinations, I don't know if Crawford can handle taking that shit in the ass. Lightning hurts. It will kill you. But if we're talking about immediate vulnerability, I mean, I just think Crawford's more exposed. How about that? Crawford's more exposed, man. He's inactive. He's undersized. He's facing a fighter who's been in rhythm for 18 months. The margin of error for Terence Crawford is razor thin, but, some are saying that Crawford can make the impossible possible and be perfect. But Canelo could probably afford a slow start, man. Crawford can't. That's the difference. Canelo can absorb early pressure. He can absorb early pressure in a rally. Crawford's got to be flawless from round one, first second of the first round to the last second of the last. And when it comes to boxing, man, that squared circle, perfection after a long layoff is rare. Even Floyd Mayweather was talking about, fighting Shane Mosley and feeling that some of the inactivity, kind of dulled him or denatured him in some of his skills a little bit. You just got to pay attention and look at history. And even guys who come out and look great or they win fights, you can see that some of that slippage, cost them a lot. Even if they go on to win, it's rare. But what I will say, if Crawford wins, I think it'll be the true definition of a masterclass. And he is going to be hoisted to the top of the boxing mountains, and he will forever be talked about as probably the greatest fighter to ever do it. But if he loses, the post-fight narrative will be clear. His inactivity in hop, skip, jump, and weight classes, but the inactivity, most importantly, cost him everything. So very, very interesting. Activity versus inactivity. Bottom line, man, this fight is just a collision of two risks. Canelo being burnt out and Crawford being rusty. Both of these guys are dangerous, but I just think, rust kills faster. As brilliant that Crawford is, can't deny him, man. He's got it. But I just think that brilliance fades when the body isn't battle tested. And on September 13th, we'll find out if that time away of the ring and taking that year to incrementally put on the size, to get used to facing guys in the sparring who are heavier than him. We'll find out if the brilliant team that he has, if that time away has helped to make him sharper. Or if it left him in the cold, where he'll end up getting knocked out cold. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Canelo Alvarez. Hey, man, Guadalajara, Jalisco's finest could be burnt out. But when it comes to Terence Crawford, no matter how burnt out Canelo is and how slow he is and how he's not firing on all cylinders, the inactivity of Terence Crawford could give a guy like Canelo an opportunity to come back in the fight and rally down the stretch and eventually put the bing bings on Omaha, Nebraska's finest. And that is not what Crawford wants, and you can't afford to let that happen. Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. Become a member to the channel. Time for me to go run for an hour and a half. I'm in the breeze.